The power of purpose. So today I want to dive into the whole question of what is my purpose? Do I have a purpose? How can I find my purpose and all of that? And the first thing I want to say is that I don't believe that any one person has like this one specific purpose besides self-mastery. I believe that every human's purpose in this life on this planet for humanity is to self actualize. And what I mean by that is that, like, we come onto this planet, some people say that we already have like a spiritual mission, which is our purpose, right? Some people say that you find your purpose. And I do believe that you actually find the purpose. And what I mean by purpose is, as I said, self realization is the first purpose that is about you mastering this school of earth and finding out who you truly are, which is a spiritual being, a spirit, a little God, right? A conscious being versus you just staying in your primal nature, you staying in your, yeah, unlived potential, which is you being an animal. Okay. So some people say you were born with this purpose. I believe that's the only purpose, to self realize. And then there is a purpose of what we could translate into some kind of a career, an impact, right? How we use our talents to create a positive impact on this planet. And that is ultimately what it's about. Finding your purpose is becoming a humanitarian. Finding your purpose is about, and I want to break it down. So when I say purpose, for example, me, I somehow do believe that we come onto this plane with the potential to self realize. And for me, why I feel like I'm ready to really build a platform on here and share a message from an authentic place is because I've seen a lot, I've been through a lot, but it all started with where, like, which family I was born into, because my mom is white, my dad is black. That automatically gave me a wider perspective on life just by birth, right? Many people will never attain my level of perspective, no matter how much they learn, I believe. That is just an advantage, if you want to call it, in terms of like a broad perspective, which I believe is something to attain, a broad perspective, to widen your perspective, to um, expand your perspective, right? So I had that from birth. White mom, German mom, Ghanaian dad. I was born in Germany, and then when I was 3, we moved to Ghana. So, also going back into like childhood psychology, we know that a child forms their level of identity, or like the deep imprint on the subconscious happens around, yeah, the first 7 years, right? So I have been deeply immersed in the German world, including the climate, right? The food and the whole surrounding until I was 3. And then the rest of these 7 formative years, I have been in Ghana, and then I came back to Germany. So I have really absorbed both of my cultures from an immersive experience. So it always gave me this split, like a mental split of, okay, so my mom is white, my dad is black. I know all of my black family. I know like my white top part of the family. So I'm just saying that to say, like, that has been my prime or like my childhood reality and imprint, imprint, right? So I'm just using myself as an example also for you to follow along your own journey. And then the next level, was being immersed in the German culture, but identifying as a black girl because when I came back to Germany, I had until then been mostly around black people. So I knew I wasn't really German. Like my skin doesn't look the same, but I also I don't really fit into the black community. That being as a yeah, as a mixed person, right? So fast forward, like I don't want to tell my whole story today, but that has been very, very formative for me to never be able to fully say, I belong to this group or I belong to this group, which gave me the capacity to expand on that and to say, it's never about just one group of people, right? Every time people want to speak about religion, they just form a group. They take a side. I don't take sides, right? I know people, I've always known people like from this side and from this side, black and white, then Muslims, Hindus, Christians. I've known people like that since I was a child. So I had never had those prejudices like that. I was always curious because I always felt like it's the essence, right? Because again, looking to that side, my dad is black, looking to that side, my mom is white. I already knew it's about the person. It's never about the color. It's about the vibe, right? How people call it. It's the vibe or it's the spirit. So that's how I was like raised, not even raised, like that's how I grew up just by being in my family and in my surroundings. And that's why I believe that purpose is the more you see, I'm going to look down here on my paper because I feel like I've written down a few interesting things and I don't want to miss them. So I believe that the more you see, the larger your perspective on life is, the more you have seen from people, places, things, cultures, religions, the foods you've eaten, right? Like everything, right? Everything, the more you've seen, the bigger your horizon is, and the more you see how fucked up things are later on in life. Like, I just want to go chronologically on my timeline as an example. As I said, I was born into this mixed family, white mom, black dad. Then when we came back to Germany, I lived in a neighborhood where there were all kinds of people, Lebanese, Indian, Turkish, German. I was friends with the boys, with girls. My mom was very open. Like, she always let me experience things. And so I had a very diverse like upbringing. Then I traveled very early, right? I saw things. And I remember just a few weeks ago, my cousin, like my baby cousin, who's also now an adult man, but he asked me, like, what did you want to become when you were a child? And I remember that I wanted to be a doctor for a long time because I always wanted to help people feel better because that's what I thought, oh, that's what a doctor does, right? I want to help people become better or get better and enjoy their lives, right? And I believe that is that these are two very important components to find your purpose or to actually create your purpose. Because everything I'm saying is leading up to getting a sense of how to create your purpose. Because again, I don't believe that there's one purpose for people that you were just born with and that's it. You don't have to find it. You find it by means of going out into the world, depending on how much you've seen until what point in life, right? If you've never traveled, if you've never seen the world, of course, you have to go out into the world and then experience some things, right? But for me, it was always like, okay, I'm here. I see this, I see that. I want people to be happy. I want people to be peaceful and laugh and dance and have a good time. I always wanted that. And it's like the silver lining of my life. So I wanted to become a doctor, but I always was curious about people, as I said. And then I also knew this was one of my first things that I knew this is one thing that I want to get to was knowing that my dad was always like struggling financially or always having the topic in the back of the family back in Ghana. They need money, they need money. So money, money, money was always at the top of my mind. So I knew that I wanted to get into business, right? So business creates money. So this was, again, it was like a goal for me already. I did what I did. I experienced life. I danced, I was in theater, I followed my bliss literally from a very young age, and I was allowed and privileged to do that. And then growing up, always getting higher and higher. So the next form of school, I always loved learning. So the next level of school, then the next level of school, then studying international business, right? Studying an international business, and then also, again, studying both of my cultures on a deeper scientific level. That's why I talk about self realization, right? Finding your purpose is ultimately self realization. And self realization, I will come to that. I will explain more what I mean by that. Because in order to self realize, you have to understand people, you have to understand like culture, right? You have to understand the context of the culture and the paradigms and the parameters that form those cultures. And there's one theory by Gerd Hofstede. If you are scientifically interested and you want to dive into things like that, where he has like the dimensions of culture, and there that's the dimensions on which you can measure culture and their differences and their similarities. And you measure culture, for example, is that an individualistic culture or is that a collectivistic culture, right? Individualistic, more Western; collectivistic, more Africa, India, right? Like, yeah, those divides, let's call it that, right? So I studied that. I studied both of my sides because I have both in me. And that's why I feel like I have this brand, like a grand overview on things, not just on a level of observation, but also of study. Studied Ghanaian culture, right? And then also seeing what other cultures are collectivistic more, Latin America as well, right? And then more of the richer countries, the industrialized countries are more individualistic. Okay, there are other parameters there as well, like time and different things, how to understand people, how they build trust, how they operate, right? How important different things are, like time and punctuality, or getting to know somebody, like real relationship building, or is it your accolades that people need to see? Things like that. I don't want to go too specific or too scientific, but I studied that. Okay, then knowing that, okay, going into corporate, right? Going into corporate was the next level for me. I was always looking for ways to find solutions, always naturally, because I had compassion. And I believe, again, I'm speaking to women here. I believe that is the superpower of women. Like, we do have compassion, we do have intuition, and we pick up on a collective intelligence. And this is for me, like, I didn't necessarily like consciously choose all those things, but I knew, okay, that's my life, right? That's the context that I move in. I want to learn more about it, learned with a lot of fun and travel and people and places and culture and experimenting, then learning more scientific level, then being in corporate and not being able to really apply what I had learned until then, just the basic human understanding, but it wasn't for me. So why I'm saying that, I believe that ultimately, yeah, we always want to learn something and get ahead in life and create a solution to stop suffering, right? I believe it is something like your purpose is something that you come up with once you see enough bullshit, right? As I said, like with my dad, I always knew that family back home needed money. I wanted to create a solution. Let me study international business and then be somebody that can contribute. That's how I've always thought, right? So you find your purpose by seeing, like going through life and seeing enough bullshit, and depending on how broad your perspective is, how educated you are, maybe in what context you move, like who influences you, you see the bullshit and you see what's happening in your immediate surroundings, right? You see it in your family, you see it in your community, and then maybe you even see the bigger picture. You see the whole world, you see the planet. And then you think about, like, I want to create a solution to it, as I said, right? And I believe that that's it. The more you see, And the more suffering you see, you want to create a solution and you want to end, right, the pain for people. You want to end their perpetual pain and their suffering. And as I always like to say, people's purposes get born out of the pain that they felt. Right? Many times, people's purposes, especially people also who become content creators or coaches or teachers or yeah, some kind of speakers, like speakers, influencers who have a message. The message has to come out of your own life experience, as I always like to say, because then it's truly authentic and it comes from a not only opinion. Like, I truly don't believe in only opinion. I believe in backing it up with some scientific knowledge, right, about people and overall dynamics, systems dynamics. But you want to end the suffering, you want to end the pain for other people because you are aware, right? And as I said, the bigger the worldview, the more you have to think. And that is also something that I teach, right? Like Think and Grow Rich, right? I have a whole program that is called Into Your Genius, where you learn about how to think, what different faculties your mind actually has, right? Like memory, perception, reason, intuition, think there's another one, but I forgot. But these are the things that I teach inside that program: how to use your memory, how to use your reasoning, how to use your perception, how to use your will. That is another one: how to use your will and how to use your intuition, right? You have to learn how to operate what is given to you. Again, also, this like finding your purpose is a matter of becoming self actualized because most people are only concerned with survival, right? So if you are asking yourself the question, how can I find my purpose? You are ready to become more than just your animalistic human nature. So, so you want to, the more you see, you more bullshit you've seen, the more you want to find the root, like the one common denominator that will actually help you to solve most of the problems with solving this one problem. That's how I went about things. And I know that this is how we need to think, right? You have to understand, like, the more you see, the bigger the problems, and you find and you ask yourself, okay, how can we stop that? And we can look at the world like this is not disconnected to what is going on the planet, right? That's exactly hands-on knowledge on how you can get ahead in life and find your purpose, right, for yourself, like get a better life for yourself, and then help other people to elevate, right, or find a solution to big problems. And what I want to say here is that I believe that it is you will have to find like the common denominator, as I said, in order to solve a big problem. For me, when I saw, okay, it's not only money, because at that point I made money, I was kind of comfortable. I knew back then I didn't know that I needed way more money than I had like almost 10 years ago. But I knew, okay, my belly was full, like I was not in survival mode. So I knew I had the capacity to think bigger. And the next thing that I saw that I wanted to solve, again, seeing the big scale. I'm also somebody, I'm willing to look into the dark side. At that time, it was me looking into like the food industry and the whole system of health. Let's call it that: food, pharmaceuticals, medical industry, like the whole thing. And how, for example, also what is it called? Like animal breeding, or like the animal production for the food, the meats that we eat, how that creates a lot of negative impact for the environment. So I saw, okay, the environment, the environment is fucked up. Okay, so people are getting sick, right? Like there is two big problems, right? Environment fucked up, people are getting sick. I mean, that's a global problem. That's a big problem. So I thought, okay, all right. And then I also saw people in my direct environment. Like at that time, it was my dad. Like he was so sick. He had so many diseases. And I was looking for a solution. This is when I found also Dr. Sebi and and other people. And then I became a holistic nutritionist myself because I wanted to help my dad and the rest of the community. And I've been doing this for a while until I realized like people actually don't really want to be helped. Like they still believe the system. Yeah, but I'm just saying that to say this is when I realized, okay, people are actually not necessarily receptive, right? Just to make that point land, right? I saw a lot. I had the capacity to see the world and to see different topics and interconnectedness, and then also to see, okay, like what big problems do we have? I studied international business, right? I wrote the thesis on culture, but I've seen even more, right? Through the whole business global. I studied international business, so global operations and all of that. So I saw, okay, industries and problems and what's actually going on and what is something that is dear to my heart. Like, how can I actually make an impact, not just as a like a cog in the machine, right? So I wanted to give that to my dad, all of the knowledge. He wasn't receptive. And then I realized like people are too indoctrinated by the system, too indoctrinated by what they believed in, right? They believed in taking the pill instead of changing their diet, right? People weren't receptive to it. And then I got a layer deeper, and this is where we are starting. Again, coming back to the topic of purpose, right? So I realized, okay, that's not it, or that's not the root of it, right? Because I was always looking for the root. I was always looking for how can I help people with the common denominator that will, if that's solved, everything will kind of be solved, right? And then I got drawn in by my mentor for many years, my spiritual mother, and I decided to learn more about personal development and transformation and self-mastery and how the human works and the subconscious and the nervous system and neurology and how the brain works and how you can use all of this knowledge to create the life that you desire. But the most important thing is that you learn to see your own patterns, become self aware, and then master yourself ultimately. So, if you want to find the root of all evil, the root of all undesirable things in this life, it is ignorance, is not knowing, is being in the dark, unconscious, subconscious, is unknown, right? It's ignorance. Ignorance is the biggest problem. People don't know. And people especially don't know themselves, right? Sometimes like there are people like PhDs on outside topics. Cool, fine. It also needs to exist, right? But the most important thing that everybody has to study is to study themselves, is to self-master, to understand the makeup of your humanity, right? The first layer for me, as I said, was about food and understanding anatomy and food and the digestive system and microbiotics and things like that, right? And this is what I'm obsessed with, right? Like finding a solution to create a desirable life. And knowing better, right? Coming out of ignorance is through knowledge, right? It's through knowledge. That's why I said in the beginning, I don't believe only in opinion. I believe in knowledge, in education, in science, but also in metaphysics, right? In what is above the physical. But there's a science to it as well. So enlightenment, enlightenment is the opposite of being in the dark. Enlightenment is the opposite of ignorance. If you don't know something about yourself, you're ignorant, right? So you have to become enlightened. Enlightened just means knowing, finding out, becoming, shedding light on it, becoming self aware. Self awareness is shedding light on yourself, shedding light on your darkness, right? So once you know better, and that's a very big concept. And I believe that there's like, we can't talk about it enough because people consume content all day long, or even like listen to podcasts about food. I'm not going to sit here talk about food or nutrition. I'm not going to do that because people actually know what they need to eat. People kind of know what they need to eat. They just don't do it, right? And then if you know it, you have to experiment. But people don't do it. But really bridging the gap, and that's what I'm all about. Like, if you are really serious about transforming yourself, self mastery, studying yourself, and creating a desirable life, that's the ultimate goal, to create a desirable life for yourself where you feel good in all the domains of your life, health, relationships, right? Your career, your purpose, right? You will find out what it is that you have the talent to create something around, and also finances, right? That's the ultimate goal, to live a life that we enjoy living, coming out of suffering because it's not necessary, right? But it's a work. And that's what it is, like bridging the gap from knowing better to doing better. Right? Actually, the formula of change, that's what I teach in my vision workshop. So if that's interesting to you as well, become part of the school community. I teach the workshop every month, and it will really help you assess your life in all four quadrants of life: health, relationship, career, and finances. And at the ultimate center is you, your awareness, right? And how you can train your thinking, your self awareness, your reflection, your emotional regulation. And that is, as I said, the formula to creating new results is cause and effect, right? Is based on that premise, cause and effect. And the cause is thinking, feeling, speaking, acting, result, right? Thinking, feeling, speaking, acting, result. That's it. Think the right thoughts, feel the aligned emotions, right? Speak or communicate in a way. And speaking is not only with the words, you communicate everything, right? Through everything, through the way you dress, the way you smell, right? What you send out into the world. That is your vibration, right? The law of attraction is based on the law of vibration, which comes from this cause, your thoughts, your feelings, and your voice, right? Your speaking, your vibration. And then acting in alignment with that, acting in alignment, and then over and over again, this creates new results. Sounds easy, right? But the most difficult transition between people, between the desire to change and then the actual change, is in the habits, right? In the habit building. We can also exchange the word action for habit, right? Again and again, because you have to do it repeatedly. You have to get into a new groove, into a new hypnosis, into a new habitual doing, right? Because you are what you do, right? You are what you do. Okay. So that is how you create a life you desire, right? But again, as I said, if we look at the world, the systems, the wars, the environments, the relationship, the health, all aspects of life on this planet, we have to understand that humans are the cause to that, right? And the ignorance of humans paired with all of the artificial stimuli, artificial programming, like culture, like the culture which is made up of religion, of certain ideologies, right? Of certain symbols of power and status, and what what culture, what society has defined as this is what you need to do or attain. This is what you need to be in order to be happy. Because this is what people subconsciously assume. If you have all these things, you will be happy, which is not true. Again, because there's no self-assessment, right? If we don't check it, and that's exactly what we're doing here in this work. If you don't assess it, again, if you want to assess your life 360 degrees, get into the school community. There's a one part of it is free, and this is where I hold the vision workshop. Okay, so I would love to see you there. The vision workshop is all about assessing your life, designing a vision. Like you have to do it, right? You have to consciously create, design a vision for your life and find a purpose. Okay, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about purpose in this video. Okay, so just to summarize, I'm not finished, but to realign onto what I'm trying to convey here is that we're not born with a purpose, right? We find the purpose, we create a purpose through our life experiences, through seeing the shit that is going on this planet, and then having a feeling, having a calling, as it said, right? Having a calling to actually do something about it. And then we go on this discovery journey, aka some people want to call it the hero's journey, right? Or the heroine's journey, right? Like I don't want to get too deep into it, but we go into this journey of discovery, of finding, of research. Why are the things the way they are? Because we want to alleviate suffering, and alleviating suffering comes through knowledge, which is the opposite of ignorance, right? Knowledge is enlightenment, right? Okay, so truth is enlightenment, true knowledge, right? Knowledge of self. So we're distracted by many things, and that's where it ties in. Finding your purpose is about finding suffering, suffering, seeing misery, seeing hell, right? And then through the act of going on that journey within and also without, on research journey, is to find a solution for the suffering. And first, you got to take your own medicine and free yourself from all the bullshit, because the bullshit is the religion, right? The way it's being taught, the culture, like the cultural norms, right? You have to do this, and by this day, by this age, you have to get married, and then you have to have kids, and then you have to buy a house, right? And then you have to buy a dog, and then you have to, and maybe like now you're trapped already. You're already trapped by the system. Now you can't really move freely because you got to pay off all of that, right? And you have never really experienced who you are, but now you're already trapped, right? But I know it's changing, but it's a very archetypal analogy, right? But that's it. Like we follow the symbols. Again, marriage is a cultural or even religious indoctrination. Marriage and family and the nuclear family, and then the dog and the house and the car, and then maybe two vacations a year, right? That has been the American dream. I live in Germany. I think it's a universal or a Western dream, right? A Western dream that has been attainable for maybe the past few decades, right? And people thought, okay, that's what I have to have. But that is a cultural program. It has nothing to do with actually like really who you are, and especially not with your purpose. That is not necessarily the purpose. So I want to go deeper into what purpose can be here to break it down a little more. The real the real solution, or the real purpose that you want to find, is a solution to the suffering that you've seen. As I said, for me, it was with all the awareness that I had about like the environment, the animals, and the humans. Environment, animals, and humans. Like there's a three big fields of negative impact: environment, animals and humans. So let me find a solution, right? So I dug into food, organic food, right? Organic, healthy food, organic agriculture, which is good for um, the soil. Then also thinking the meat, the way it's produced today, do we need it like that? Let's think about that, right? Becoming conscious of that. And then especially how does it affect the person, the human and his or her sickness, right? So, okay, let me find a solution. I dove deep into health. And then I dove deep into, as I said, as the next thing, not only physical health, but mental. Because I realized that the programming with my dad, I saw he's not going to take my medicine. And this is when I saw the programming. And the programming was too deep. So he couldn't admit or he couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept the goodness that I wanted to bring to him. So I knew in order to understand people even deeper, I wanted to understand human baseline, right? As I said, neurology, the nervous system, the programming, right? Religion and culture and all the status symbols and what it actually took to either get myself out of it, because at the beginning of the journey, I was definitely also ignorant because I thought, oh, I want to study other people, but I had to first swallow my own medicine and I had to do the work inside of me because no one, none of us, not you, not me, we are all infiltrated. We are all infected by the disease, right? Because we were all unconsciously born into the environment, right? Into the cultural atmosphere. We're all unconsciously born into that. So we have to constantly reflect and ask ourselves. That is a process of, right, becoming self-mastered, is to reflect ourselves and to think, am I operating in the same way that leads to toxic end results? Okay. So it's really about the brain, understanding how the brain works, the ego, and really how we are wired, right? Hardwired as women, as men. What is our baseline? Like what is the primal part of us? Like if we, because I said, like if you think about purpose, if you're still here, if you think about purpose, you're already somebody who is on a path of higher thinking, of elevation. It's not true because it's a long path to actually get there. Because purpose is a big word. Some words just get hijacked by culture and people like just take it and run with it and it's an accessory and all that bullshit. I'm gonna talk more about how many people are talking bullshit in the front end, right? But in the back end, they're not doing the work. But okay. So it's ultimately around about asking yourself, what is my purpose that leads into a higher level of being? But most people in the baseline and what is hardwired into us is survival and reproduction. That is nature ruling us subconsciously. That is the animal in us, right? Nature has its own intelligence and we are just subject to it, right? It's like a plant. Like a plant doesn't decide if it wants to grow this way or that way. Nature just runs its course. The same thing with animals, right? Animals, like everything, all of their intelligence is programmed into them, their instincts, right? That's why they know how to do certain things just by nature. And nature runs its course. And the same thing is true for humans, but it's just partially true because one thing that humans have that other animals don't have is the potential. And that is the ultimate differentiator because not all humans are created equal or they are not equal, right? Because some people are really on the basic animalistic primal level and some people develop capacity, intellectual, yeah, impulse control, and so on and so forth. I don't want to go too deep into the details, but it is ultimately about understanding if we want to create solutions for the bigger world, for the bigger, for humanity, right? We have to first start with ourselves because humans have destructed the world, right? Like we all, through our compliance, right? Or our active participation, yeah, we have destroyed the world through all of the things that have been set up and we participated, right? The food industry, medical industry, and so on and so forth. The whole system is hopefully collapsing. But I'm not like everybody, yeah, okay, like now is a new world. The work that it needs in order to actually create something new is this work that I'm teaching. It's self-mastery. It is self-actualization through self-awareness and then having the tools, the thinking tools, right? The into your genius tools, as I said, and different tools, different knowledge and understanding on how to integrate this knowledge and apply it into the cause and effect of your thinking, feeling, speaking, action, results. Yeah, line. I hope you understand. Okay, so it's about the brain and it's about our lower nature, which is animalistic. And the bottom line here is that we are animals. And the most important thing that the human body, which is the reproductive system, everything in your body is connected to your brain. And the most primal part of your brain is the reptilian brain, right? If you only have that, this is the automatic, right? Like it's just automatic, it's impulse, right? If you have that, there is only animalistic tendencies, and this is how we sabotage things, right? So it's survival, it's ego, right? It's reproduction without thinking ahead, just being in the moment, right? Just being in the now. No, it's about having a broader awareness, right? And understanding. And that's why I say having a purpose is your own construct. You will have to design your purpose through assessing what have you been through, what is the perspective that you have, and then ultimately understanding, okay, how can I apply what I learned or what I am also going to dedicate myself to learning even more? How can I apply that to create change through the common denominator that will affect the biggest change? For me, it is human consciousness, right? Creating consciousness in your lower nature, right? It's creating consciousness about who you are as a human and how you act, how you move, because those things ultimately create your results and create a ripple effect into the wild, into the outside world, right? So we have to rise above our own primal nature, above our own like reptilian brain, above our survival and reproductive mode. That's not everything, right? That is just the baseline. And if people speak about fulfilling your potential, becoming your best self, it is growing out of your baseline. It's taming your own beast, right? It's about taming and governing your own animalistic tendencies, right? So we have to learn about ourselves on a physical level. And that's why I don't agree. Like I've been in this sphere for 10 years now, like heavily invested. I invested six figures into my personal development, into my coaching and my training. I've learned with the best people on this planet on this topic of transformation, right? So I'm heavily invested in this topic. I've learned a lot about the mind, the brain, the connection, right? The body mind connection, and how we can actually create results, right? How, being looking great, right? Relationships, career, and money, because we have to build that, right? And building requires self-awareness, like getting out of the primal level of only surviving food, sex, survival, right? Food, sex, money. I always like to say money, sex, and power, right? And if you don't learn about yourself, you will not fulfill your purpose, right? You will not be able to fulfill your purpose and therefore have an impact on other people because you are being ruled by your own unconscious tendencies. And I want to give a real life example because I know this sounds very scientific and maybe even a little like unrelatable, but I want to tell stories about me so it becomes relatable. So, one thing that I realized today is that in order to be able to speak, some people say like speakers, they just speak, but no, I believe you have to earn the right to speak and you have to earn the right through having done the work, whether it is your research, but also being not perfect, but you have to be in integrity. I live what I teach. This is one of my values, right? I live what I teach. I don't teach something that I don't do, right? So I couldn't be sitting here speaking about overcoming our lower nature if I would be having casual sex like all around the place, right? I spoke about that in other videos that this has been my biggest sabotage, right? Not understanding my primal, like really my primal urges and therefore not often, like I haven't like been sleeping around or whatever. And I haven't been in real long-term relationships with people like that. So men were never really a big part of my life because I always had myself in focus. But because I was like living like a hermit, and then maybe once a year I popped out and I was like, okay, maybe now it's time to get to know a man. It always short circuited because I of course, right? Like I am attracted to the alpha male or whatever. And because I wasn't really male centered, I didn't really care to study too much about that. But then I realized, okay, I am a woman and I am of course, I'm attracted, and this is where my own demons came out, if we want to call it that. And when I say demons, I speak about our lower nature, our primal instincts. It's not necessarily demonic, but if it's unaware, it will just override our consciousness. Like I didn't plan to do that, right? I didn't intend to do that, but yeah, just putting two things together that are very naturally tempting for each other will create a certain outcome, especially if you are unaware of what's going on here. I hope you pick up what I'm putting down. Right. So, but what I want to say here, the example, right, is to really understand ourselves. I can't be sitting here and talking about something that I'm not doing. Practice what you preach, right? And I speak about self realization, especially as a woman. You have to master your lower nature, right? In order to fulfill your purpose. Because if you have a mission and you want to effect change on this planet, because that is what it is. As I said in the beginning, concerning yourself with a purpose is becoming a humanitarian because you've seen a lot of bullshit. You want to create solutions around that, right? Whether it is health, right? Whether it is relationships, whether it is a career, right? Helping people find their purpose or their talents or their designed career, or whether it is money. You have to go to the root. You have to go to the root. Purpose is the gateway to something higher, but the gateway starts with your root. I hope it makes sense, right? It's not about spiritually bypassing. It's really about coming back to yourself and acting out of integrity. And I'm going to speak more about that because I've seen a lot of people on my path that have been portraying something to the front end, but they weren't doing what they preach in the back end, right? Portraying a community and mental health in the front end and then sleeping around with women in the back end, right? People who preach and advertise healthy food and organic food in the front end, like and then in the back end they fall asleep in their bed with a bag of chips, right? Not organic chips, right? I'm not pointing those petty things out. Everyone is human, right? And we can all like take part in a little bit of pleasure here and there, but check if it's in alignment with your messaging and be authentic about it. right? Because I believe that that's what's going on this planet right now. People are losing trust in leaders because people are just portraying something in the front end and doing something way different in the back end. And I've seen it with my own eyes. Right? I've seen the dark side with my own eyes. That's why I know what I'm talking about from my own perspective, my own process, my own evolution, but also what I've seen. And that is my purpose, to talk to women about their bottom line, to rise above it. Money, sex, and power. How do you deal with those things? Have you integrated those things, right? In order to step into your purpose and effect change on a global level, on a global level, right? So, yeah, I think I'm not going to go into the next thing that I wrote down here. Or let me do it. Let me tie it all together. If you're following, I appreciate that. So one thing that I see again, no, it ties in perfectly. So one thing that I see, as I said, is that people portray something in the front end and then do something completely different in the back end. And some what that is, it's also called doubt. Right? Many people have doubt. What is doubt? Doubt comes from the word double-minded, right? You're double-minded. You do something over here and then you do something over here, and it's not in alignment. It's not coherent, right? It's not coherent. It doesn't align. It doesn't align. It's like two separate people. It's like a split personality. It's schizophrenic, right? And many people are like that, right? Those things run in everyday life. Sometimes it just gets like highlighted in those extreme forms. But people in doubt are people with a double mind. And then they do this and then they do that and then they doubt this and then they doubt that because it's not aligned, right? So what that is that you have the dark side, you have your primal nature, which is first concerned with money, sex, and power. And when I speak about power, I mean resources. You want to survive, you want to procreate, and in order to do that, you need resources. This is what a human being is primarily concerned with. And that's why we have to acknowledge it and also then go and work for the money, right? Go and work for the money, earn our keep, and really create something that sustains us, right? That's why I'm not for free labor. I'm not going to give away my energy. I'm not going to give away my wisdom, right? My knowledge, my understanding, my consultation, because I'm a consultant, a life mastery consultant, right? And people want to pick your brain. No, right? The same thing goes for you, right? So it's very important, the double-mindedness. This has to end. This is one of the biggest sabotages in order to get ahead and get ahead fast, because you have to be in alignment with yourself instead of constantly arguing with yourself. You have to get clear on who you want to be. You want to continue to do those things in the dark side, or you want to actually integrate that, master this, yeah, to align with that. The front end is the values, right? The values, the being the clean person, right? The more perfect something looks, the probably it's not, right? That's why you got to come out with your shit. That's also what I do in other videos, right? I don't pretend to be holier than thou. Like, I had to overcome all of those things, just like as I said with the men. Right. I think that was my biggest vice or my biggest weakness, because I wasn't aware that this was actually ruling me like that. And that's why I speak about that. You have to first take into consideration that this is your hard wiring. You are an animal, if you want or not. And the more people avoid that work and looking into the shadow and allowing themselves to accept that that's who you are, your darkness, right? If you don't look at that, you can never go into that direction. You can never actually build something, because you will always be in doubt. You will always be double-minded, and your weaknesses, your animal nature, your primal instincts will always sabotage your growth into something virtuous, right? And something of integrity, because integrity is like actually being the person you say you are, right? Instead of having a whole nother life hidden in the background. Okay, so Change on the planet can only come from individual self mastery, self governing, self leadership, making yourself do the things you know you need to do in order to live a healthy life, a holistically healthy, desirable life that is actually virtuous, right? That is worth to replicate, where somebody wants to learn from you, where you are a role model, where you become enlightened, right? Enlightened simply means to shed light on your ignorance, right? So that's it. Summing all of this up, we spoke about that purpose is not something inherent, right? I believe that purpose comes from staying a an open-eyed human being, right? As I said, from my childhood story, I came into this world and I looked around and I realized, okay, my mom is white, my dad is black, so most of the stories of the world I don't even believe, right? This whole racial divide, like it never applied to me. Like I was like, what's that? Then I grew up around all kinds of ethnicities and religions and people, so I also never bought into that story, right? And then I continue to learn and study on a scientific level, people, cultures, right? The dynamics, the differences. I studied world religion, I studied neuroscience, I studied biology and anatomy, right? And the way you transform human behavior. I studied all of that, right? Because at every point and markers, I wanted to create a solution. And today I know the number one common denominator and the thing that I'm focusing on in order to affect change is to help people master themselves. It's to help women master themselves, right? Because that is, if you do that, the world will change. The whole world is going to change. But change will have to come through individual self responsibility, accountability, self mastery, self governing, self leadership. That is it, right? Nobody's coming to save you. No politician, we've seen that, right? No politician, no man. That's a very important part why I will continue to speak more about men, because women always hope that a man will come to save them. It's not going to happen and it's not really worth it. Like, that's not how you should waste your life. But finding your purpose is about being open to life and looking around and acknowledging maybe your own suffering, but also definitely other people's suffering. And for many people, it is poverty, it is sickness, it is relationship pain, it is not having a direction in life and not being able to manage all of their affairs, the health, the relationships, right? Their own home, right? Their work, their time management, their energy management, and their money management. We need all of it to govern ourselves, to fully govern our lives. I'm not speaking about you can't get help. That's the ultimate goal. The goal is to step into your zone of genius, step into your power through understanding what is the silver lining of your life, what has been always a topic, what is something that you've observed, that you've learned, right, that you're very good at, and then therefore helping other people to master that part of their life. That's how we trade, right? Finding your purpose is about you becoming self-aware and seeing how you can effect the biggest change for your community and ultimately humanity, right? So your purpose is something that you decide that is it, but it has to come through observing yourself and the world around you. It requires compassion and a drive to get the knowledge on how you can bring the solution to other people, right? And therefore, everybody takes their position inside a collective, and everybody comes with their genius, everybody comes with their purpose, with their with the work that they have assigned to themselves. You, what is the work that you have assigned to yourself that you had to go out there, master, and then now come back to the global marketplace and offer it to people so they can go through your process of helping them change and master that part of their life, right? And then you do it one person at a time, one person at a time, one person at a time. That is purpose, that is power, that is impact, right? And it happens through you and your story, and then deciding which problem do I want to tackle? Which problem do I want to solve? Which problem can I solve best with my unique life experience, with my skills, with my talents, but absolutely also the willingness to learn and grow and to learn more about different parts of ultimately creating a business, right? Creating a voice, a message, and then a business, right? Because you want to give and to be compensated back. So, yeah, that's it for today, talking about finding your purpose. And I'm looking forward to see you in the next one. And as I said, if you're really serious about this work, because we're over here building a global collective of powerful women who are on their journey of self-realization, who are on their journey of creating an impact from what walk of life you come from. It doesn't matter because we need a diverse ecosystem. We need a diverse network of women, professionals, self-taught, self-mastered in all fields, health, relationships, right? Career, branding, right? Fashion, um, makeup, finance, investment, like everything. We need all of it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one. That's it for today. Bye bye.